The Creatives with AI podcast.
Hello, welcome to this special edition of the Creatives with AI podcast. I'm your host, David, and on this show, we're going to talk about what's coming up in the new year, give some thank yous to everybody who supported us along the way, and cover some new things like the AI Podcast Network and with AI FM. So, happy holidays, and let's get to it.
The Creatives with AI podcast, the spiritual home of creatives curious about AI and its role in their future.
Hello, everyone. So today's a little bit different. It's just me, but I did want to take some time just before Christmas to give a bit of an update on the podcast, where we're going to go next year, and give some thank yous to the people who've supported us along the way. And talk about a couple other things. So on the list, we'll start off with some thank yous. I'll go into sort of what's coming up next year in the podcast for 2024. We'll talk about a little bit about the AI Podcast Network, which is a larger group that we're putting together with Futurehand Media, which is one of our sponsors, and also the With AI FM network, which we're building also. So a few things to update on. Thank yous, though, come first. I think the first thing is, massive thanks to the listeners. Without the listeners and people sort of listening to the show and sticking with us and being supporters, then there wouldn't be any reason to do this. And frankly, it'd be very difficult to stay motivated and to keep doing the show if we weren't getting great feedback from other people and from people listening. So thank you to everybody who's listening to this and who keeps listening. I know there's, we have a few very good super fans out there who are spreading the word. You know who you are, but yeah, thank you very much for all your support. I also want to thank Dee Dee Wallace, who was, if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you'll know that Dee Dee was my co-host in the beginning. She really gave me the sort of courage to start the podcast and kind of helped me along in the beginning, and then kind of dropped out after a few episodes just because it didn't fit with her time schedule. But I really, really appreciate her sort of taking the time with me in the beginning and actually encouraging me to do that. And look where we are now. We're like 30 episodes in and it's going great. And so I can't thank Dee Dee enough. Next, I think are the guests. We've had 30 different people on over the last 6 months. It's, I've had people I would have never thought I would get on, like, Russ Shaw and some others, and people have been amazingly receptive, and very willing to come on and have conversations. And, particularly in the very beginning, we had our first few guests, we had no track record. We didn't even have any shows published yet, but everybody stuck with us and they said, yeah, sure, we'll be happy to come on the show and we'll support you. And that's meant the world to me. And I really just want to thank them for, sort of taking a punt and coming on and supporting us. We're growing all the time. We've got, a couple thousand listeners now. We're getting more and more subscribers every day. We're getting hundreds of downloads, sort of every 3 or 4 days now, which is actually really, really good. So we're scaling up and, very gradually growing our audience, and that's amazing. So thank you to the guests again, and watch this space. We'll have a big party at the 1 year anniversary. So watch your email boxes for that. Aside from the guests, I also wanted to thank a couple of people, particularly one who's really taken the time to mentor me and help me out with understanding how to set up the podcast and the things that I needed to do. And that's Dan Kendall. He's the founder of the Health Podcast Network, but he's local to me here in Tunbridge Wells. And he was amazing. When I mentioned that I wanted to start a podcast and I had some questions, he volunteered to come and, meet me for a coffee, and literally just went through a whole list of, you need to think about this, you need to think about that, you need to understand your niche, you need to do this, do that, do that. And his advice has been invaluable in getting the podcast set up in the beginning, and also I think setting us up for success. And so, yeah, Dan, thank you very much for that. There've been a few other people. I'm going to mention a couple of other people in a minute, but Dan really on the mentoring side for me as a podcast host and producer, he's been really, really key. So thanks to Dan for that. We need to thank our sponsors as well. So Futurehand Media has been the sponsor for the show and sort of supports the costs and everything until we have other sponsors involved. So shout out to Futurehand for that. Now we have a few partners also that I think have been key in helping us develop and get as far as we've got so far. So one is Riverside FM, which is the platform that we use to record the show. And by the way, there'll be links to all these people and all this stuff in the show notes if you want. The partner links are affiliate links. So, if you do click through and you sign up, we do get a little bit off the back of that, which, would just help pay for the show. So if you can do that, it'd be much appreciated. But anyway, particularly Kendall at Riverside, who's one of the sort of success managers there. She's been really, really key in helping me understand the platform, but also with great advice about how to run a podcast and how to be a better interviewer. So hopefully you guys who've been listening to the show for a long time have noticed that maybe I'm getting a little bit better at being a better host and asking better questions. And if that's the case, then Kendall probably has a lot to do with that. I'd also like to give some thanks to Mike, Isabella, and the entire team over at Music Radio Creative. Music Radio Creative does all of my sound engineering for the episodes, so they make sure, and also Mark specifically, because Mark does all the engineering for the show, and they just make sure that we sound as good as we possibly can based on the recordings, and I really, really couldn't be happier. Music Radio Creatives, they've also done the new trailer that at the beginning and the end of the show, and the voiceovers and all that sort of stuff. And Mike's been a guest on the podcast, so you can look up that episode as well. But from a business perspective and a partner perspective, they've been hugely supportive, and I really appreciate that as well. And lastly, I'd just like to give a shout out to Podcast Page, which is a specialist podcast website hosting platform, and it's run by a guy named Tom. And Tom has been amazing. He's offered brilliant support. Every time I've had any sort of a support issue, he literally answers me within like 5 minutes. And it's been amazing. So I really can't talk them up enough. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, or you have a podcast and it's all a bit awkward and you're tired of trying to, maybe mess around with it in WordPress or whatever, give Podcast Page a try and see if you don't like it. I think it certainly was excellent for me when I was starting out and growing the show. So thanks again to Tom. And I guess last but not least, obviously I need to thank my family and my wife for being so patient and listening to me bang on about podcasting and AI incessantly for the past 6 months. I'm sure that it's not her favorite thing to talk about, but she's very patient with me and listens to me talking about it all the time. So honey, I love you, and thanks for your patience, and also to my son with his patience. And my son's done a little bit of help on the backside, helping me with show notes and stuff like that as well. So thanks to him for that, and also for listening. Right, that's all the thank yous out of the way. So I wanted to just have just give everybody a quick overview of kind of what the plans are for 2024. You may have noticed it's a little bit loud in here today, and that's just because I work in a co-working space, and you're used to sort of seeing people in the background and moving around and general noise. One of my things that I'm working on over the holidays is I'm setting up a studio at home. So hopefully this will be the last episode that'll be recorded in the office, and everything from now on will actually be recorded in my home studio. So the sound should be a little bit better, and I'm going to start adding video and more video into the process. So I've been able to set up, I've got a new camera, which you'll get to have a look at soon in the next episode, hopefully. And that whole new setup is basically coming online over Christmas. So even if I don't, it's going to maybe be a bit wonky for the first couple of episodes while I get all my kit in order and try and figure out what I want it to look like and how the lighting's going to work. But after that, I think the idea is that I'll still post the audio only versions of the podcast on all the podcast platforms, but I'll also post a video on YouTube. So if you would rather watch it and listen, or just listen, you'll have the option to do either one. I've had probably 50-50 feedback from people on that. So half the people think, no, I just want audio only. I don't care anything about watching. And the other half are like, no, I really like the video. It's more engaging. We like to see you having the conversation. So I'm going to try and make everyone happy. Although we all know that you can never make anybody happy any of the time. So along with the video stuff that's going to happen as well, if I've got the setup and I have a more controlled environment, that also means that I might try and do some live episodes as well. So I think that could be quite fun, particularly if it's sort of during business hours and it's during the day and people might have the time, to sit and do it. I could either do it live on YouTube, or I already participate in some live shows on LinkedIn using their live tool, which has been quite interesting, and it seems quite easy to use. And obviously it then saves that and people can go back and listen to it later. So I think I might try some live shows just to kind of see how that goes. So if anybody in particular is looking to come on and wants to try it and see how it goes, let me know. Send me a DM on LinkedIn or on socials or something like that. The other thing I've been thinking about doing is, and this was based off some advice from Dan, is to maybe run some mini series on specific topics. So I was thinking about doing something, maybe talking about LLMs, for example, or the different types of AI. And it could be just the idea is to do sort of 6 to 8 very short 10-minute bite-size episodes that really dig into the technology. So it might be how it works, what are the legal things, what are the ethical considerations, blah, 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 and set those up and then run them for a variety of topics. And those will be content that can just be updated as the technology changes or as the laws change or anything like that. So those can always stay fresh, but they'll be there for people kind of as evergreen content just to listen to anytime. And those would be little bonus mini series. So I want to do some of those this year as well. And I think that's it. I mean, I've already got some amazing guests lined up. I'm recording this just before Christmas. And at this point, I have about 10 people lined up for January already. So, I've almost got 3 months worth of shows there. So yeah, it's looking pretty positive for early next year. And I have some amazing people on the list. So I can't wait to tell you who those are going to be when we get closer to the day. Yeah, so that's going to be good. I think that's it just for the high level. One of the other things that we're part of, so I've always wanted to set up, and I've had this idea about the AI Podcast Network. So that will be a place and a website where people can come and you can find information about not just creatives with AI, but a whole variety of AI-focused podcasts. And the idea is I just reach out to different people running AI podcasts. I ask them if they'd like to be on the network. The first thing I'm doing is just bringing some together. So at the minute, I think there's 8 different AI-related podcasts that are on the site. So if you just go to the website and you look, every time somebody posts a new episode, it just comes on the list. So you can go to the website, you can see that anytime. The other thing that we do, though, that's tied to that is I do a simple weekly digest email. And it's literally just, hello, everybody, here's your weekly digest, boom, 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 boom. And it just lists out the new podcasts that have appeared in the past 7 days. And just a simple link so you can click through, you can choose the ones you're interested in or not. At the minute, that's just all of the podcasts because there's only 8 of them, so there's not that many. As we move forward, I'm going to start to categorize all of them into different categories. So it might, whatever their area of focus is, some might be legally focused or some might be marketing focused or whatever. So if you're only interested in one topic or area, you'll be able to select which mail you want to get, and then you'll only get the episodes that are related to that topic. But at the minute, it's just everything because there isn't that much of it. If you want to be part of that, and if you want to subscribe to that, just go to podcastnetwork.ai. And again, this will be in the show notes. So if you look at the show notes, you can just click on it. But yeah, podcastnetwork.ai. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. There's a sign up form there. I just need a name and an email address. We don't do any advertising. We're not going to try and sell you anything. And we don't share anybody's information with third parties. So you don't have to worry about that. It is literally just for this weekly digest. So yeah, please go along and support the show that way. The more subscribers we get to that email list, the easier it will be for us to get sponsors for the platform, which is ultimately what we want to do. Because once we have some sponsors, then the sponsors will be able to reach out directly, and we'll be able to put some sponsor names in there and stuff like that. And it will be a good way for them to communicate. And it will also be a good way for us to get some revenue to help pay for the show. which is the most important thing. So that's coming. That's actually there in live, but we're going to add more and more shows. The other thing is that from doing the Creatives with AI podcast, obviously I've touched on a lot of different topics along the way. So we don't specifically just talk about creatives and we don't just interview creatives. I think it's more for people who are creatives to listen to different people to kind of think about different aspects. But what's become really evident is that I think we need specific shows for other verticals other than creatives. So, one of the big ones is education. I've talked to a lot of educators. I want to talk to a lot more educators and people working in schools because I think the potential for AI to help students and to help make education better is massive. But that deserves its own channel to have specific conversations about that. So I want to set that up. So we'll have education with AI. We'll have women with AI. That's another topic. I still believe, and I know I've said this on the show before, but I still believe that I think AI is potentially going to have an outsized effect on women in the workplace because a lot of the tasks that the new sort of chat GPTs and the large language models are very good at doing tend to be in women-dominated industries. And so I think we need to have specific conversations around that. So I've been involved in Women with AI here in the UK. I've been to some amazing events and had some amazing conversations. And, I've had loads of women on the show in the past, and I will have more in the future. So I want to create a platform with shows in those different verticals. So it could be marketing, could be legal, could be women, could be education, could be creatives, could be whatever. So creatives is obviously the first one of that. But what I'm calling it is with AI FM. So if you think about like a radio station that has different shows that are on all the time with a different focus, that's exactly kind of the idea that I want you to have in mind. And the way I'm planning to roll it out is I'm looking for hosts and sponsors. So I want to get sponsors who are companies in those verticals or who have a significant interest in those verticals to sponsor the show. I would really only like 1 or 2 sponsors. I don't want to have any more than that. I think if we get more than that, then it just turns into an advertising nightmare. And that's not what we want. We want to have engaging conversations. Yes, we need to have sponsors and we need to get a little bit of money in to cover the costs and that sort of thing. So we are looking for sponsors. And what I also want to do to go along with that is I'm not going to host all those. What I really want to have is I want to have people who are experts already in that industry, who have their own networks. They understand that industry inside and out, and they can lead more engaging conversations because I know nothing about the law, for example. I would not be the person to host, legal lawyers with AI. I'm not the right person to do that. But if I could find somebody who was a lawyer, who worked in that space, who was maybe using AI or at least had an interest in it, then I think they would be a much better person to host that show. So that's what I'm looking for. I've got a few ideas already. It looks like the first ones might be women, marketing, creatives, and potentially legal, but I'm not sure. But I'm open to any vertical. If anybody has any interest or anything, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or on socials. Suggest verticals that you think that you would like to hear, and I'll be happy to try and track those down. And if you have ideas for who you think, hosts might be good for that, or if you're interested in sponsoring or someone that you think might be a sponsor for that, then please let me know and share that. But that has its own website as well. So that's with AI.fm, and that'll be coming soon. So there's not really much on there other than creatives at the minute. So we'll be starting with that. And I think that's pretty much everything. It's just a quick episode this time. Again, like I said, just to say thank you to everybody and give everybody an update of where we're going and what we're planning for 2024. So thanks for that. Don't forget to support the show, please, by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts, it could be Spotify. We're on YouTube, so we're on YouTube Music if you want to listen to the podcast there if you have a YouTube Music account, or if you just look at the YouTube channel, then we're posting videos and shorts and clips on there of the show as well. So we've kind of got bases covered on both sides. So hopefully that covers everybody. And also please go and subscribe to the email list on the AI Podcast Network, which is podcastnetwork.ai, because the more people we have on that mailing list, then the easier it's going to be for us to get sponsors and stuff in the future. So I think that's everything for today. Next week, just before Christmas, I have another conversation with my friend Mike Nemirovsky. And I just wanted to have a nice casual conversation, but we're going to talk about, in theory, how we want AI to work. And should AI be a reflection of the world as it really is? So, it looks at the data, it sees biases the way the biases are. Or do we want AI to present some slightly modified version of the world the way we think we want to see it? So do we want AI to give us fiction, or do we want AI to give us the truth? And so that'll be the context of that conversation. That's coming up next week. So in the meantime, everybody, have a happy holiday season. Don't have too much fun at your company Christmas parties. And we'll catch you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
The Creatives with AI podcast, the spiritual home of creatives curious about AI and its role in their future.